Downtown Fargo, where culture, creativity, and community collide. You've heard the headlines. Now hear what's really happening. Bringing the best of Broadway direct to you. The stories, the people, and the places that make downtown the heartbeat of our city. This is Rocky's Downtown Hour with Rocky Schneider.
Happy Friday, everybody. This is Rocky Schneider with Rocky's Downtown Hour. Coming to you on this a little bit gloomy and rainy Friday, but I always try to look at rain and say that's what cleans up everything. So when the sun comes out, it looks nice again. So trying to look on the bright side, but we know we've had a lot of rain this week, and it changes people's attitudes. But if it's raining and not snowing still at this time of year, I'm happy with it. We have a great indoor event tomorrow taking place in downtown, so it's well equipped for the weather. We have the Miss Fargo and Miss Downtown pageant happening at the Fargo Theater. So this will be the first time we've crowned a Miss Downtown. And I don't know if it's the first time for a Miss Fargo, but we haven't had a Miss Fargo one prior to this year, to my knowledge. And so this, if you think about it, we all know Miss America pageant. The next Miss America could be crowned tomorrow at the Fargo Theater. That's our hope, right? You pick a winner and they go to the state level and they become Miss North Dakota, and they move on from there to the Miss America pageant. Brings a lot of publicity back to our area, and I know they do a lot of great things, and they get a scholarship, and they go around and do a lot of community events. So we're looking forward to having a Miss Downtown that can help us highlight some of the events and good works of people over the next year. I think we have 10 contestants for the Miss pageant happening tomorrow, and I think there's 4 for the teen pageant as well. So if you have any interest in that, come on down. It's at 4 o'clock at the Fargo Theater. I think it's $10 for adults, $5 for students. Then it's free for if you're 5 and under. So you can bring your kids. It's a fairly cheap activity, something to do. They're probably serving popcorn, is my guess, at the Fargo Theater. So come down and enjoy. I will be a judge. So this is my first time judging a pageant. So I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm hoping somebody else helps me out. But I think we have a couple former Miss North Dakotas also on the judging panel. And I know AJ over at Halberstadt's is also on the panel. So he will be the best dressed one on the panel, I think. And so looking forward to that. Be kind of fun, something different. And that's fun to have these different things happening in downtown Fargo. And the Fargo Theater is the best place for it to happen. I mean, that stage is meant for crowning. And so I feel like we're going to see a lot of talented young ladies. I think it goes up to 28 years old, so I suppose they're younger than me. So the young ladies works for me. Last night was my favorite event in downtown, though. We have our Night Bazaars that Folkways puts on. Last night they made quick work and a change with the weather. They moved it over to the Civic Center, and it was going to be outside at Broadway Square and 2nd Avenue there, but they moved it over to the Civic Center. And when I went there with my daughter around 6 o'clock last night, it was packed and hopping. And I think they made that place sparkle, or whatever the right term is for a magic themed event. But it was fun. They had lots of booths with different wares for sales, different artisans and food vendors. And then they had people on stilts. They had somebody dressed up as the moon, walking around, not a full moon, didn't see the full moon there, but he was a slice of a moon walking around on stilts. They had a band playing, delicious food, the mac and cheese, the Cajun mac and cheese, and it's the best event. It's fun. People are kind of go all out. They dress in costumes, or they just come normal, and it's quirky and fun and different, and Folkways just does a lovely job bringing the community out and bringing them together, and it's always fun to see who shows up. You see people by themselves with dates, just being themselves, meeting new people, and sitting down and enjoying it all free too. I mean, you can walk in and just enjoy music and sit there and camaraderie and community. And it's really my favorite event. Folkways does a good job. Round of applause for them, I think. I know they are starting to end their season a little bit here. I think they're over halfway anyways. I know they have a lot of Red River markets coming up on Saturdays. I love the fall markets. So if you're looking for something to do tomorrow, 10 to 2 tomorrow is the Red River Market. I've been told we're in borscht season. If people don't know what borscht is, that's my favorite soup. It's a beet soup, and so that's when the farmer's market comes to be fall, and you get the beets and the fresh dill and potatoes and those sort of things. That's what I look forward to coming into fall. I feel like it's good football food. You get soups and chilies. I made a chicken green chili yesterday, and it was delicious. My kids ate it up, so that's always a win. But I know the farmers market is something that changes every week, and that's always fun. You get your favorites too, but when you're talking about fresh produce, you get changes with that too, and so you get to experience each season. So come on downtown tomorrow and then stay for the Miss America pageant. I am pumped for the show today. We have one of the longest businesses downtown and successful businesses who chose this year to make a huge expansion to our business and take a risk. You know, having a successful business is one thing, but then taking a risk to make sure it stays successful and has the potential to grow too. We have Nichole from Nichole's Pastries, which is now Nichole's Pastries and Café. And so I was there a week or two ago when the cafe opened up, and I had my favorite menu items, always the croque monsieur. If you've never had one, it's delicious. And they have food there along with their new market area, and of course all their sweets and treats that they are known for the last 20 some years. We're gonna have Nichole on to talk about what inspired her to be downtown and what inspired her to put herself back into her business. I know those small businesses, especially in the restaurant world, can take a toll. And so to see that is really inspiring. And I think it lifts everybody else up around her as well, that she decided to do that. And then later on the show, we're going to have Jan Eliassen, who's in charge of the harm reduction division at the city. That is the group you probably read a lot about recently. There's the Downtown Engagement Center that offers a lot of social services to those experiencing homelessness and those others that need help. And she's in sort of in charge of that division. So she's been at the city for almost 20 years now, I think. I think it's probably been 17 years. I know she came aboard working the Gladys Ray Center and then moved over to this. And Jan is a great partner of mine. I work with her on almost a daily basis or her team on something, and looking forward to talking with her. There's a city commission or city information meeting coming next Tuesday that we're going to talk to her all about. But when we come up next, we're going to have Nichole with Nichole's Fine Pastries and Café, and we get to talk about her whole new menu. I'm excited. Nichole's passionate about downtown and passionate about her work, and she'll be on in a couple minutes here. Welcome back. This is Rocky Schneider with Rocky's Downtown Hour. We're joined now with what makes downtown great. I always tell people when they come to visit downtown Fargo, we get so many great reviews from visitors that haven't been here before because it's unique here. I'm going to say it's one of a kind because you come downtown, it's not a bunch of TGI Fridays and Applebee's and everything else. We have a food community here that's unique with a lot of small business owners running the different restaurants, putting out their shingle. And so, I mean, every restaurant you go to is unique, and they can come back with an experience. It's something different. You know, that's what I want people to leave Fargo with. I don't want them to come here and just say, well, that was comfortable. You know, I want them to come here and experience something new. I mean, even something unique. If, you know, that's what I love about restaurants. You can go and try something new, and even if it's not perfect, if it's unique, you're like, that was an experience. You know, that's what food should be. It's an experience we get to have every day, and we should enjoy it and make the most of it. We are what we eat. And so we're welcome to Nichole. Thank you for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So Nichole, tell us about your business. Just give us the background here.
Well, I started a pastry shop in January of 2003. And I said all I wanted was that and sell some espresso, a little wine. But we started making croissants. Well, then we started making sandwiches. Well, then it was like, we have to have soup. So it all kind of blossomed into more, I'll say lunch, savory. And in 2010, expanded into the building directly south. And then again, I had an opportunity in 2015, purchased those two buildings. And now, after, we got through 2020, working on expansion plan again, I've just had growth every year for about 20 some years. And it's very impressive that this community has supported me so well.
Yeah, I mean, that any business to last that long is incredible. But we're not here talking about your retirement. You know, you doubled down and decided that you do love this, you love the community, you love your space, and you put, I don't know, almost $1 million back into the building to make it add to your restaurant capacity.
Yes. No, it was to the point where we had kind of maximized the facility. Our lunch was busy enough that we could only serve so many people so fast, the menu was stuck at a point because of the equipment. Well, it took what we did in order to make the changes, and it's a lot. Added a liquor license on so we can serve mixed drinks, which is what we all expect at a restaurant. So kind of a funny thing I'll share. I think in 2020, I went out of my office, I went upstairs and I looked, what kind of a license did the city give me? A restaurant license. I'm like, dang, guess I better use it.
Yep. No, that's so you have a new menu. What changed about your menu? What can people expect when they come there now?
Well, we're able to make a burger because we added a flat top grill. I bought a fancy oven so we can have French fries without a deep fryer, a little healthier.
Yep.
And it sets us up to be able, even if we wanted to cook a steak in this oven, we could, or on the flat top. So the possibilities are kind of endless. And I think we'll listen to the community. We want to fit a niche that doesn't exist and kind of carve our own way because of the European style. I mean, I think that can be just a lot of fun for all of us that work there.
So the reopening's been open month or so now?
Not quite a month. August 14th is when we were able to reopen the north door.
And you've been busy.
Yeah, we have been.
You even tried to, I'm gonna throw her under the bus. She tried to get out of the radio interview today because she was so busy, which is just awesome. But I said, no, not letting you out. No, but we're happy to have you here. It's a great problem to have. And I know I've enjoyed my time there. I grew up like 3 blocks from that location. And so I love it there and appreciate you recommitting.
You bet. Yep. Because I was to the point where I could like walk away or sell or like you said, really invest. But I'm going to go back to this word busy.
Sure.
At certain times of the day, yes, we are. At other times of the day, no, we are not. And so to keep that whole business moving forward, and there's 30 plus people on the staff, there's a big payroll.
Yeah.
So the investment is not only in the building and the equipment, but it's also in people. Well, in order to keep all that going, we have to have sales in the evening. And I shared a little bit ago, it's time for a new website, new ordering platform. We get that figured out. Then it's going to have to be delivery in order to build our sales.
Yeah, and I think, you talked about the people too. And we want us to be a foodie community. You need key milestone restaurants like this to get the next generation that experience, both from the business side, on the cooking side. And you never know who's going to take over for you at some point or start up their own dream, and go on to the next thing. And I that's what we need, because people don't go to the same restaurant every night. I'm sure there's some people, but people want to jump around to different food hotspots.
Try different things. I'm going to throw in there too that a few years ago I started hosting some externs coming from the Culinary Institute of America. I attended that school at Greystone in California, but the big school is in Hyde Park, New York. Well, that brings in a little educational component, and I think it's invigorating for some of us to go, oh, wow, they're doing this at school. Well, we could try and do it here. So just trying to bring people into the community so they realize what's going on in this town. There's a lot of good momentum.
Yeah. So, I always look at the thing that makes downtown work too is destination ones, so that it's tough as a new business to market yourself and get your word out there. And so you almost rely on your neighbors that are destination spots that have been around to bring the regulars down. And then as they walk to their car or walk by the next business, they see the next one and kind of go, oh, that's there. I'm going to try that sometime, and I feel like that's how you get the next generation. That's why downtown, we share a right of way, a sidewalk, a marketing, a customer experience. You don't just pull up and then leave. It's not a strip mall necessarily. And
correct.
And so, having these long-term businesses are so important.
Well, and the walkability of downtown Fargo has gotten much better over the years. When I first came back from California, Broadway was very vacant. Yep. I mean, yes, there were businesses, but it was not as vibrant as it is now.
So what made you want to be downtown?
I don't think there was any other choice. It seemed like that was the perfect spot. The vibe that I felt could be built, and it kind of a simple answer, really. I worked at a catering place a block away. Then I worked at a chocolate place very close, and there were just some little blinking lights for me to go rent that space and start. So I didn't look out in West Fargo or all over because it was right in front of my nose.
I was a frequent visitor at that chocolate place on the corner. So it was good.
Yes.
So you also added this retail component where you have, sort of, I don't know what you call them, artisan goods, fancy olive oils or whatever they are,
Yep.
and those sort of things. But tell us about that.
Well, that building was vacant most of last year. And I wanted to help the block. That was one thing. And I've mentioned the idea to a couple of my friends, and they were like, yeah, you should do that. I'm like, okay. Well, knowing when you start, there's a lot of unknowns. But I also felt that those of us that like to cook, we run up against some things like we can't find this. Yep. We're not going to drive to the cities to pick up something. So we all stock up down there. So that's part of my thought. But then it also, thanks to somebody really waking me up and going, that'll be good too for the renovation. We can keep business flowing through there. Because we were up against space limitations, okay? And I think the market, we've been calling Nichole's next door or the market. We're trying to figure out, and then I'll put words on the window. I will. To support local, because some of the items that are on my list are local honey. Oh gosh, there's hot sauce in town. The sky's the limit. There's local pasta coming from the East Grand Forks area. But there's a mixture too, because we like imported goods that are clean label. And that's what we're trying to put together in that. We had fresh florals this summer. We had tomatoes coming from the company we're buying local tomatoes from. We have local organic eggs. We have some fancy butter from France. And then we're selling the butter we use in the pastry kitchen.
I'm happy you mentioned the pasta because I was in Bend, Oregon a couple weeks ago at their farmer's market, and it's pretty similar to our farmer's market. Their fruit is way better than our fruit, but otherwise, it looked very similar to ours, but they had a lot of fresh pasta for sale there. And I'm like, I don't think we have that at our markets. And you mentioned even East Grand Forks is where you have to go, but like Spaghetti Western makes its own pasta.
Right.
How can we talk them into, selling it somewhere too? Because that would be delicious.
Right. And my business has been asked about fresh bread.
Oh, yeah.
And I keep saying we don't have a good oven to make fresh bread.
Yeah.
But I know there are many people in the community making very good bread. And, maybe we'll end up at the point where they can drop the bread off and people can pick it up there.
Yeah.
Once the markets close, I don't know.
Yeah, I know the sourdough sells out at the farmer's market in the first hour every weekend. And
that's what I've heard.
I used to go to Youngblood when they had their sourdough. That was a regular thing, and that stopped. And so, yeah, one of those things. We got to figure out how to do that. And I keep inviting restaurateurs to my show here, hoping they bring samples with, and nobody's brought any yet. And I'm just
do you know why that is? Because we're so busy working on it, we run out the back door and forget.
Yeah, but no, my favorite. So macarons are my favorite, and so. Just to not get too far away from what your bread and butter is, right? Is the pastries that are there. That's still an everyday thing. You come get your espresso and pastries of your favorites any time of day. But what are the hours?
We're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., Tuesday through Saturday.
And you have a reservation system now for dinners and lunches.
We do. And people have been finding that. And that helps the crew that are going to, be prepared for you.
So what's your go-to menu item? What's the recommendation if they ask you? What do I have to have?
I think the omelet royale with hash browns. It's been very well received.
So what makes it a royale?
That's a good question. Very well made.
Very well made. That works. Yeah. You got to be a queen to eat it.
No, there's herbs and Gruyere cheese.
Oh yeah, Gruyere is always good.
It's fancied up.
I like the croque monsieur. That's always my go-to item on any menu. And yours is a little bit different than I expected it to be, and it was fun and different.
Good. Well, we always have to put a twist on
Yeah.
the classic. There's all kinds of reasons for that. I think also the walleye sandwich has been
That's been popular.
popular.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about if people want to have an event at Nichole's? Is that an option?
That's a great question. We get asked about it. The space I think in the front of the retail area, we could a small space, small area.
Yeah.
But for us to say devote the north side, the pastry side, just to some people, I hesitate to do that.
Sure.
When we're open.
Well, okay, so Nichole's Fine Pastry and Café is on 8th Street, just south of Main Avenue in downtown Fargo. If you haven't been there, it's been open over 20 years. Encourage you to try it. It's always something new there, and it just expanded, and it's one of my favorites. So thank you, Nichole, for having the time to come on today, and we look forward to having you on again.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll see you downtown. When we come back, we're going to have Jan Eliassen with the Harm Reduction Division at the City of Fargo, and talk to you again in a minute. Welcome back to Rocky's Downtown Hour. I have the wonderful Jan Eliassen joining me today. Jan, if you don't know her, she's a treat as one of the best people that work in our downtown. She runs the Harm Reduction Division at the City of Fargo, and we're going to talk about what that is. It's sort of a general name if you're not in that world. But Jan has been around City of Fargo and our issues involving homelessness and supporting our community for the last 20 years or more now. And I came across Jan. I was on the Community Development Committee at the City of Fargo back when the Gladys Ray Shelter opened up, and Jan came over to help run that, and that's been successfully opened for 17 years now. That's incredible, Jan.
Yeah,
so Jan, tell us about, what does harm reduction mean?
So harm reduction is essentially working with people and accepting the fact that people choose to engage in really risky behavior. Regardless of what the behavior is, people will choose to use, for example, anything that's considered risky. And rather than just trying to get people to just stop all of that, we try to work with folks to help them figure out ways to avoid some of the really adverse consequences of risky behavior. And what we find is that when people take baby steps toward abstinence, for example, that it goes much better. The conversation keeps going, whereas if we start talking about abstinence immediately, the conversation tends to stop right there. So we have a much better chance of affecting change in people's lives by taking a harm reduction approach.
So I think, like, the layperson, if you said the difference between like quitting something cold turkey and then kind of weaning off something.
Right. Helping people prepare for any step that they're willing to take and prepare for the pros and cons of that, and just really provide that support to help people be safer. And that ultimately then the community is safer.
I know one thing I've learned from working with you now over the last 2 years in our downtown is that you approach, your team, or you approach people every day that need help, but they're not always ready for that help.
That's
and
right.
Don't judge them off their bad days, because the next day they may all of a sudden say, hey, okay, let's go talk. And that's just been so refreshing, I think, because in our policy discussions of the day, it's easy to have see somebody do something bad and say, well, that's a lost cause. But you every day wake up and say, well, I'm going to go try again.
Definitely, and that's the philosophy behind all of our outreach. Sometimes it takes many, many, many times and to convince somebody that your intentions are true, that you have their best interest at heart. Some folks have every reason in the world not to engage with us, but without engagement, nothing happens. So we have to work to engage with those folks in a way that's different than their experiences in the past.
Yeah, not to go totally off, but we don't really hear about your successes.
No.
We hear about your next challenge, not the successes you've had, because those people go on and do become back part of society that you just fit in with everybody else. I think we were just talking to Nichole, and she said one of the construction workers was homeless for a number of years, that now was in construction and working on her renovation of her thing. And so now you wouldn't know that unless you really got in a deep conversation, and you guys don't get to celebrate that.
The successes, that even affects the people who work in the industry. You have to work in the homeless response system for quite some time before you get to see some of those, either small successes or some of the bigger ones, such as getting into housing and staying there. But yeah, we don't talk a lot about what helps people get on a different path and what that looks like. I have reminded folks that, I've been called about people downtown for 17 years. And some of the folks that you don't see downtown anymore, it's because they were housed and they had the right supports in place, so they stay housed. And, we just don't talk about that as much as we could. Those folks are often willing to tell their story, so we could always take a look at, how do we do that? How do they tell their story to you, for example?
Okay, so we're going to talk about the Downtown Engagement Center, the DEC as it's called. It's been a hot button, I guess, if you want to call it that. It was established during COVID in a building the city happened to have, the old police station near Broadway. I think it's been agreed upon through the master plan for downtown that it's not an ideal location for a lot of different reasons, for both those getting service, those providing service, for the neighbors, for the community. And so we've been working together to try to find, okay, how do we establish it somewhere that makes more sense? And the city commission acted on Monday to look at 3 different locations as a potential relocation option. A lot goes into that, obviously. A lot has taken place. But what does that mean in your world?
The relocation?
Yeah.
I think, first of all, there's a number of things that we have to do in preparation for that, regardless of where we go. We all know that we're not in an ideal location now. Plus, the building itself, we've learned an awful lot about what we don't want in the future. The building itself poses a ton of challenges for us and for the people we serve. It's, and contrary to popular belief, homeless people are not downtown because of the engagement center. We're downtown because that's where the people we want to serve happen to exist most of the time. It's where most services are. It's where a lot of local government property is, and so on. I think that moving, we would have to do some prep work with the people we serve, talk to them about what they think will be the biggest challenges to getting there or finding us. I think that the results of that are yet to be seen. I think that we'll work it out and we'll figure it out no matter what, because we exist to serve people, and we do that in the lowest barrier way we can. And if that means we have to figure out some transportation in order to not create one more barrier, then that's what we'll do.
Yeah, I think one of the comments I got from somebody when asked, what's the key criteria for a successful, place like the DEC? And I think the answer I got kind of made me think. It said, well, it has to be someplace people want to be.
That's right.
And it's you can take that a lot of different ways, because I've heard people like, well, you don't want it to be a draw, right, for people outside the community to come here because you have such a nice building or nice services, all those things. But at the flip side, if it's not someplace people want to be, these people are not going to go there to get help. And so it's such a sort of a dichotomy of an issue to try to solve.
Yes, for sure. It's right now, our current space isn't particularly inviting. We do everything we can to make it feel inviting and to keep it safe and so on, but there are a ton of challenges with just the number of walls and rooms that there are in this building, and the fact that we're on different floors. Getting onto one floor, having a space designed to do what we do so that we can see more. It's much more open. Even the artwork and the way that the colors on the wall can make something feel completely different, right? We all know that. Our job is to create a safe space, a non-judgmental space, someplace that people want to walk into, and also balance that out with, I mentioned earlier, we're low barrier. That means we don't necessarily use, if somebody drank that day, as criteria to say, nope, sorry, you can't come in. Our criteria has more to do with safety. Are they safe enough to be here? Are they a danger to themselves? Are they a danger to others? And then work with them, because for so long, the folks who really struggle with substance use and significant behaviors related to mental health have been left out of the system for a number of reasons. And it's not that some of those reasons aren't good, it's just the way it's been. But if we don't serve this population, we don't change things in our community, because this is who's costing our community the most, right? So we have to get people in the door and also balance that out with staff's ability to keep the building safe. Which is a challenge when you can't see outside your building, when you can't see everybody that's in your building. People living in crisis sometimes, end up in more crisis right inside the building. We need to be able to respond differently.
So the DEC often gets, you and your team sort of get lumped in with, I'll say some people think you're causing the problem because you're trying to help the problem, if that's just a straightforward way of saying that. And I think that's what we're all struggling with downtown. Is I've always looked at those unsheltered or those without homes downtown is it's a vulnerable population, and there are definitely those that follow vulnerable populations around to take advantage of them. Or as you said, they're not all safe by any means at all times anyways. How do you separate the bad influences or the bad actors from those that, have a realistic shot of getting that help that you're servicing? And, how do you separate that to give them the best chance of success?
My number one expectation of staff when they get hired is making it clear that they have to commit themselves to engaging in healthy, meaningful relationships that allow us to have conversations with people. And when you're invested in the relationship and you start to get to know people, that's sometimes where you start to pick up, like, maybe this person doesn't really belong here. There's probably another service in town that can serve them better. Or maybe, they're here for some other reason that isn't okay. And you're right, this is a really vulnerable group. Even when they are, if some of the folks we serve are vulnerable and causing big issues somewhere else, people don't see them as vulnerable, but they still are. They're very vulnerable to predatory behavior and to really any decision that others make on behalf of that affect their lives. So we have to be really aware of that all the time, and every day throughout the entire day as the deck is open, we have to be thinking about who's here, who needs to be here, are we able to keep everybody safe, and do we know this person enough even to continue serving them?
And I think what you do the best that you instill in your team too is, you're a rule follower. When someone messes with the rules, they're wrecking it for everybody else, and you understand how that plays into the bigger picture. And I know everybody downtown appreciates that, because when a group is in need of help, they also sometimes break the rules, to survive. And you tell them, hey, cut that out. And you're okay addressing it and being logical about it, that, there are these things that need to be addressed. It's not all black and white out there by any means.
Right.
And every day we have a challenge with that. But we're going to come back and have more talk with Jan, and we're also going to talk about the city information session coming up next Tuesday. Welcome back. This is Rocky Schneider. I'm joined by Jan Eliassen with the City of Fargo's Harm Reduction Division. We're talking about the Downtown Engagement Center and the issues of the day in the news. We have the Engagement Center. The City Commission took some action to look at 3 locations to relocate the deck. The deck has been where it's at for 5 years now since COVID. It's was a kind of an emergency choice during COVID. They had a building open, trying to find some better locations. It's gone through a huge process. We had the Bloomberg group here looking at a lot of criteria and different maps and a lot of different priorities, different perspectives, I think. And the 3 locations, maybe if anyone's interested, the city is looking for feedback. So on Tuesday, there's going to be an informational session at 5 o'clock at City Hall. And have the 3 locations out there. There's a survey, I think, on the city's website right now asking, what do you think about these 3? Prioritize the 3 locations. And just to throw them out there, one is the old Fargo Brewing location. Another one is more west and a little bit north of the Fargo Brewing location, a couple blocks, and another is over on First Avenue by the police station. And so they all have pros and cons by any means, and they're all going to have pros and cons for both those getting services and also for the immediate surrounding neighborhood and everything else, and the area that it's leaving. We think it's going to have a positive impact. It shouldn't be where it's at right now, but understanding that there's a lot of criteria that fit into that. So we're happy that the city's moving forward with it now, and hopefully it's better for everybody at the end of the day. But Jan has been the one sort of in charge of the engagement center since it came about. And I guess what do you see as the long-term goals of this? Is this a service? I get asked all the time, why is the city leading this? And I always try to tell them that there's a lot more than just the city involved in this. And maybe, so what is the deck? Who works there?
So the city's involved. We're all, myself and the other staff are under Fargo Cass Public Health, which of course is part of the city. I do see it as the city's role to look out for all community members, even those that don't have a place to live. And it's not unusual in communities all across our nation where local government and state government, they're involved in providing services. In fact, we look to our state government all the time, to the Department of Health and Human Services, and we want them to help, but then there's this question about local. So the city of Fargo is essentially providing some staff in the space for us to try to achieve our mission and reach the goals that we've laid out. But there are many, many agencies that come in every single day. We have a pretty robust schedule of on-site providers. One of our challenges is we can't have as many providers on site at one time as we want, or if they want to have space for meeting with people, that's where the challenge comes in. And I can't go through the entire list, but I know on Tuesday when we have this, town hall type meeting, a number of providers will be there to answer questions. There'll be a number of people up front with me able to answer questions about the services they provide and why it's mattered for them or what they envision for the future. And, some of those are actually housed right on site. We have housing people, homeless health, care coordination, which is case management style service. We have a number of folks right on site all the time. And we didn't know what that was going to do. We didn't know what the results of that would be. We kind of made some assumptions. It has helped us become so much more efficient when working with that one individual who we all are involved with somehow, to be able to just walk down the hall or even run into each other in the hall and talk about things. Has really helped us speed up the process of trying to get that person on a path to treatment, on a path to housing, or whatever their goals are.
And I think that's one thing that I've learned a lot about is, I went through a United Way did a simulation where you're homeless and you try to get to all the different services you have. If you're have limited transportation options and you don't have a stable home where you're coming from, it's tough to meet with service providers. And so having them all in one place does give them the best shot of using them. It does, creates a density, which always has pros and cons as well. And so I think that's why we're looking at different locations, but understand that that's the most effective way to provide the services. And so it's definitely a balance there. I think one question I wanted to ask is what I appreciate about your team too, is you have a team we call the HEART team, the Homeless Engagement and Response Team. Mm-hmm. And they have their HRD t-shirts now and they're out and they've been great downtown whenever there's a group of people in need or a person in need, somebody passed out or somebody looks like they need assistance or having some sort of crisis in their own way. They come by and they usually know the person and understand their thing and kind of help move them along or move them to services or, whatever else they do. And it's just been a really helpful aspect of downtown and the services you provide, but maybe just for the people that come downtown and see what they consider homeless people hanging out and causing problems, or makes them feel uncomfortable. What's the response when you hear people talk about downtown like that?
I'm really sad that downtown has the reputation that it has. I think that a number of things have gone into that. And I think that's going to pose challenges for us as we try to move beyond, if we try to move out of the building we're in now into a different area. People believe we're going to be bringing all of these challenges that downtown is facing with us. And I don't believe that. I think that wherever we are, there will be increased foot traffic for sure. But the majority of the people we serve don't necessarily, you wouldn't even know, are being served by us. When we go downtown and really try to engage with people, we try to influence behavior, try to encourage people to do something different. We can't enforce that. We can't enforce the law. But we can continue to try to engage to get them out of that situation overall. And in the past, we didn't have a consistent means of trying to engage with those folks. Like many years ago, myself and another person from Homeless Health, we were the only ones responding to situations, and it was just fitting it into our what we were already doing. And so now we have this consistent response, consistent resource out there. And, I think there's a number of reasons that people feel that things are unsafe. I think they get that message from far and wide. But also, HEART was developed to help business owners and the folks downtown who might need our assistance. And we encourage business owners or people who work downtown, even if there's one person that just seems like they might need some assistance, call us. Let us navigate it. That's what we do.
And I think it's important for people to realize too. I work with you very closely, but I also work with the police very closely. I think I'll just say it. My work, I think over the last 2 years in my role at the Downtown Community Partnership is trying to figure out how the different resources can work together more seamlessly and better as well. There's been some hiccups there in my opinion, and I think we continue to try to get better at it. And we ebb and flow, I think, on it. Sometimes it's gelling really well, but we have some issues we need to solve downtown, but I think it's mostly about helping the people solve it themselves, and that's what your goal is. And then where we can't right now because they're not ready or whatever else, we have to rely on our police officials to come out and enforce the law too. As you said, your group doesn't do that. You're trying to connect services. And so it's definitely a team effort. Everybody needs to be involved, and appreciate the city continuing to look for solutions, because it's not just a struggle here. I think Fargo, our downtown is one of the best in the country. And I've talked to all my partners around. They have all these problems a lot more apparent than we do. And so people come here and say, wow, you guys have it figured out. And then people here say, hey, we got some work to do. And so it's such a good perspective that I get to hear. And so I appreciate all the work you do, and your team, of course. Please pass that along. And Tuesday at 5, the city is looking for your feedback. So please Google it and attend the meeting at City Hall on Tuesday at 5. Otherwise, we'll talk to you next Friday. Go out and spread joy and run through the rain.